Welcome to the Growth Whisperers Podcast, where all and everything and all that we can consider is about building enduring great companies, because we like to. We believe in it. I think it's fun. And in many cases, it can make the world a better place and just great for the people involved. So I'm Kevin Lawrence. I'm joined today, as always, with my co-host, Brad Giles. Brad, how you doing today?
G'day, how are you? I'm doing pretty good.
I'm doing awesome, actually. It's summer here. And when it's summer and we're recording this podcast in the morning, so it's bright outside and it's wonderful. Looking forward to a great day. So what are we talking about here today, Brad?
Today we are talking about what we call the ambassador role. So I wrote a book called Made to Thrive, the 5 roles to evolve beyond your leadership comfort zone, Made to Thrive. And within that, one of those 5 roles of a leader or a CEO is what we call the ambassador role. And so we're talking about the ambassador role, why CEOs and leaders need to perform an ambassador role.
That'd be great. So it's not like the ambassador where you go to another country and then you set up and represent your country. It's about how you represent your company, essentially, which that'd be great. We'll dig into that. Looking forward to it. So what's your word of the day? What's the word for Mr. Giles today?
A word or phrase? It's really about what do you want to do? For me, in the last week, so many of the conversations that I've had with CEOs or business owners have been, what do you want to do? And what several conversations with people who are saying, look, it's the top of the market. I've had an offer to buy. There are listed companies out there who are hungry for deals, and they are, they're coming into our clients and they're saying, hey, we want to buy you. And they're flattered and thinking about it. So I come back to, well, what do you want your life to look like in 1, 3, 5, 10 years? Is this what you really want?
And after you sell, and after 6 months and poking your eyes out because you're bored to tears, then what are you going to want to do?
And so, like you've built this amazing business. So for me, it's what do you want to do? Interesting,
Thanks.
Different one.
Awesome. My word is frictionless.
Oh.
Frictionless. And that when things go well in the world, we've found ways to remove the friction from whatever the situation is, whether it's decisions, how teams function, machines, and a lot of leading and building companies think about, we got to do this, we got to do this. And I go, well, what if we just thought about removing friction and making it easier or frictionless for the customer to enter our business, frictionless for the customer to work with us, frictionless for the employees, just basically. And it's more operational thinking than strategic, right? It's optimization and another model I created. But it's really frictionless. How do you make things easy? Because when there's people that you work with or spend time with, and there's not a lot of friction in it, it's great. Now friction builds up, but then you got to clear it out of the system, and then things get frictionless and flow again. So that's it. So what do you want to do? And frictionless are our words for today, or phrases for today. Awesome. Well, let's, speaking of the ambassador role, I was thinking about this when we were preparing for today, and I can picture the CEOs that I work with that are outstanding ambassadors and play that role really, really well. And some love it. Like it's actually all they want to do.
Yeah.
They just want to be ambassador. And those people will get some good ideas. But then there's the others who they don't enjoy that as much. Yeah. It's not their natural style. So why do we need an ambassador? Like, why is it important for this to happen? In Brad, and you're you're the expert on this, but why is it important that it happens?
Well, in my opinion, the first thing that we've got to do is to go back and say, what does the word ambassador mean, or where does it come from in our language? And the origins of the word ambassador is ambactus, a Latin word, which means servant or to serve.
Servant.
So that's where I'm drawing this ambassador role is saying one of the roles of a leader or a CEO is that you need to serve the business or the staff or the customers. Now, this is important because this is definitely not about doing other people's jobs. It's very easy to say, I will serve the sales manager by going in and meddling around. That's not what we're talking about.
That's not it. No, don't go do his job for him. Okay, good to know. Okay.
Yeah, but how can a leader serve a sales manager or an operations manager or a customer best? And that's the genesis of the ambassador role. So it's not PR, okay? It's not designed to create sales necessarily. It's about what does the customer need? What does the employee need? What does our other employees need or stakeholders? And it's saying, so from that angle, how can I best serve those people? Now, one of the other components.
So what's the difference though, Brad? What's the difference between an ambassador and a manager? It sounds like a manager. And I know that's not what it is, but that's what it kind of landed for me. Oh, it's a good manager. What's the distinction?
Well, for me, the ambassador is one of 5 roles of a leader. Now, a leader could be a manager, or it could be a VP, it could be a CEO, or whatever, okay? But this is one of the roles. So a manager is a manager. I mean, I'm going to go back to Peter Drucker. He said that the job of an executive is to be effective, and the job of a manager is to be efficient.
Efficient. Yes, I love that.
Yes. So that I come back to effective, okay, being a servant to the all of the people that need to, and then really saying, okay, so what is the best possible way that I can serve our customers in my role without doing other people's jobs, without going and selling, or without going and making, or whatever it is that you do. And that's the ambassador role. So here's an example. Okay. I want you to imagine that you are buying a house.
Yep.
Okay. You go in and you've looked at the display home, and you've had the plans drawn up, and you've got all of the design stuff, and everything is great, and you've got the contract. So you go in for a meeting with the sales manager, and the objective of the meeting is to sign the contract. You're checking it all out, and it's all good, and you're ready to sign at that meeting. The CEO comes in and says, "Hi, Kevin, I'm here. I'm not here to do the sales manager's job. I'm just here to say, look, I want to let you know that we value you as a customer, that what matters to us is doing it right. So if you've got any major problems, you should really go to the person who's appointed to your build. But I want you to know, if you've got really, really major problems, then I might step in. But what matters to us is that we're building a really enduring home that's going to last you for generations, and we want you to be really, really satisfied. Again, I'm not here to do the sales manager's job. And so, Kevin, so thank you again so much for buying our house. Let me know. And then the CEO steps out. So that's an example of the ambassador role. It's not showing off. It's not being showy.
I got it. And I'm just trying to figure out. So I got here, the manager is efficient. The leader is effective, or the leader of the executive is effective. The ambassador is, and I'm trying to get the word there because I see it in my head and I'm trying to land the right word. You got me thinking with Drucker's quote. So if one is efficient, the other is effective, the ambassador is not engaged. It's not empowering. I'm trying to think of an E word, actually, is what I'm trying to do, Brad, and we can figure that one out later. But how would you describe the difference between a leader and an ambassador?
I wouldn't, because if I'm going to completely get all of what you've just said and throw it up in the air and
Perfect.
watch how it lands.
Love it.
If you're going to be an effective leader, you need to perform 5 roles.
It's one of the leader's roles.
Correct.
It's one of it.
Yeah. So you need to have accountability, ambassador. So you need to have a system of accountability. You don't need to necessarily hold everyone accountable, but you need to have a system of accountability. You need to have a strategic.
I got it. It's one of the hats. It reminds me of Edward de Bono's 6 thinking hats.
Yep.
It's one of the hats the leader wears.
Exactly.
It's where they just show up and they're seen and they engage with important relationships.
For the listeners, I'm going to just close out those 5. So
yes,
it's about a system of accountability where everyone knows what they've got to do, and there are KPIs and all of that accountability stuff. The role of an ambassador, as we're talking about today, culture, a conscious culture rather than one that happens accidentally. A strategy that differentiates you in the market, and then succession planning, and not in the way that you instantly think about, how are we going to pass to the next generation? This is, how do we protect that revenue stream? How do we protect that key employee? How do we protect that? So having backup plans and things like virtual benches fall into that succession planning. So they're the 5 roles of a leader, and one of those roles is an ambassador.
Yep, that makes crystal clear sense. So basically, it's a role or a hat or a mode that leader steps into. It's not so much something a manager would do. They might do it in different ways, but it's them showing up as in many ways the representation of the overall company or the vision or whatever the company is about in key roles. Love it. So let's dig into, like, how does a CEO do this effectively? Like, what does it take to be an effective ambassador from your mind? Yeah.
So like your book, Your Oxygen Mask First, which is full of really useful tools. That's the same as my book. So my book is structured with 5 roles, and there are 5 components to each role. So we're going to go through those 5 components today. And the first one is the CEO has a system to build a public profile, such as an industry forums, industry leadership, blogging, or speaking. Now, the first thing that we're going to say is, but I don't like that. That's not who I am. I don't want to put on a face. It's not my cup of tea. Yeah. Like,
that's common.
It's a completely legitimate thing. So what I would say in reaction to that is, this is best practice. How do we get best practice to work so that you're deeply comfortable with it? And I say that within the context that, imagine the organization is, like, you're the head of the organization. Without a public profile, it's like there is no face.
Yeah, and I've seen everyone has their own way of doing it. Some people will go speak or keynote at industry events. Some people will sit on a very important committee for an industry association.
Yeah.
Some people will write papers or reports. I've got one amazing CEO who was an incredible ambassador, but in his own way.
Yes.
And his way of doing it would be to write letters. That's how he would do it. He would show up to the most important, critical meetings and those relationships, because they had lots of key relationships, but his CEOs would do other ones for their key relationships. But for him, it was letters.
Yeah.
Letters and lunches. That was the way that he did it. But he's not the type that would speak at an event. He's not the type that would shoot a video or any of those things. But through many things, and he was very selective in what he did, but he did those things.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is,
in his way.
and it's got to be in your way. It's got to be authentic to who you are. But without something like this, again, it's like that we've got the head of the company, but without a face. We need to have a face of the company in some form.
It does drive me nuts on many of these companies that people are building these great companies, and there's not a name on the damn website or a face on anything. And it's all this typical corporate stuff. And in many ways, I don't
Trust.
Yeah. Now I've got one other very large, successful company, and one that was like that, where the CEO was the ambassador, but he was not the public ambassador.
Yeah.
He would basically not very little customer facing, except for in one piece of the business that he knew well, but with the team and the employees, he was like the best. He would just show up, he'd have a little chat, do a little teaching, and he would remind people of the purpose and the strategy and engage people. But the funniest thing about this guy is interesting is when I first met the whole team, I'd never met the CEO in person.
Yeah.
And then they were all at a restaurant and I came to say hi. You wouldn't have been able to pick the CEO out of the room. You would never know. He just blended right in.
And that's fine. That's his cup of tea.
Exactly.
And that's what we're saying here. Like, you don't need to become a professional speaker or anything like that. But remember that the opposite of the CEO public speaker is a faceless organization that's hard to trust.
Exactly. Perfect.
So let's move on to number 2. The CEO attends all major customer contract signings or product launches. Now, this depends, obviously, if you're in a B2B or a B2C environment. We acknowledge that straight off the cuff. But I gave the example of the home builder. That's really designed in here. So if you've got a major product launch, you should be attending it.
Yes.
It sounds pretty simple, but some people don't. If you've got a major contract signing, and you only send along your, sales manager, maybe there's an opportunity for you to go along. You think about the Queen of England, they roll her out with respect. They roll her out for special occasions.
Yes.
And it makes
the same.
It's the same.
And at the scale you're at, special may be different. Again, one of my CEOs, they worked with probably 15 major brands that they worked with as representing them. And they had like 250 locations. He didn't go to every store opening.
Yeah.
But somebody else would play that role. But when the head of the brand would come to town, they would meet that person. So those critical, and again, it's at scale, those relationships go to a higher level, but the principle is the most important. And I remember this one CEO, he was insanely busy with a massive business, but those key relationships, he would fly to Italy for a 2-hour meeting and fly back.
Yeah.
Literally, because it was only as the ambassador, and it was hard on him. And then he would go to New York for 4 hours sometimes, or a day, because he had
that matters. That's the whole point.
Because it was a business built on relationships.
Yeah.
And if you don't, if you're signing an international treaty and the Queen doesn't come, it's not real.
Yeah.
But it's being very selective on that, and just knowing, here's the ones I need to be at, here's the ones I don't. And by the way, if you're at every single one too often, it's not special anymore either.
And let's go back. This is serving the people. By flying to Italy for a 2-hour meeting, that is serving those people in the best way that you possibly can for that individual.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's move on to number 3. All employees learn core values and core purpose stories monthly from the CEO. So this is something that we've spoken about quite a lot on the Growth Whisperers. The importance of stories, how our brain is connected to stories. And if the CEO is the one that's telling some of those stories, why it matters so much to the people in the organization, because people respect what you inspect.
Yeah. And again, I'm going back to some of these CEOs, another one that I'm thinking of, and he would always talk about the purpose and the vision, right? And then he got to a certain scale where then he would hand off to some of the executives to talk about some specific core value stories. And that was a larger business. But they're the ones who need to keep breathing life into those things. Another one I'm working with, they've grown very well over the last 30 years. And the CEO just went through a project to update the core values. And then they're going to be the one that rolls it out. Oh, and I got an amazing video. Bundaberg brewed drinks down in your good country there.
Yeah.
I worked with them and updated their purpose and their values. And I just saw the video they did to roll it out and reinforce it in their induction, Brad, in their induction and onboarding, which I know that you're very passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
But they got a video produced of the CEO talking about the core values and how it relates to the business and how important it is. So not only is it he rolling it out, but they've done it as a video, so it's permanently part of every new person that joins the company.
Ambassador 101 right there. That's awesome. That's awesome. So let's move on to number 4. All new employees are welcomed by the CEO either physically or virtually within their first week of employment. Now,
I love or virtually. I never thought about that. That's brilliant.
Now, obviously, it depends on your size. It clearly depends on your size, right?
Yeah, if you got 10,000 employees, that's not going to happen unless it's a more senior person.
Okay, so let's go. Sometimes to play at the extremes is to normalize the middle, right? So if you've got 10,000 employees, how many people joined in the last week? 100?
Probably.
Okay, so
maybe you're 50 to 100, yeah, probably.
So the story or the example that I use around that in the book is, okay, so if I am doing a recorded video or a live video for the week as the CEO, I'm going to say, I want to especially welcome the 25 people that have come under, I'm going to say an English name when I'm trying to find an Indian name. India, Asha in India.
There you go.
I want to welcome the 25 people who've come under Asha in India. We've got some great stuff going on in India. And I want to welcome the other 50 people who've just joined us in Connecticut. That's a really exciting thing that we're doing out there.
Yeah.
Now that's taken me 10 seconds and I've just gone through 75% of the new hires. So it means a lot. Now that might not be everybody's cup of tea in that format.
Yes.
And that's okay. But there are other things you can do in the ambassador role as well. But do you know what? If we go from the extreme to the average, like it matters. It
does. And I love it, Brad. And there's a part of my stomach that turns as you're saying it.
Good.
Because I love the principle. And I know a bunch of the CEOs I work with, like they would be like, are you crazy? I have no time as it is. But it does matter, Brad. I agree that it matters, and it's finding a way looking for a way to try to do that.
Yeah.
Because how people feel in that first when they first arrive at a company, it's a big decision. So, and I would suggest that, for example, if I was going to talk to a CEO that had, 500 employees, I would suggest that, and I do have a CEO that probably welcomes every single one, like literally, and that's about that size. But my view would be is okay, great. Well, how can I, for the top 3 or 4 layers of the business, right? The CEO, there should be a threshold for the CEO that they would do that. It's definitely the top 2 layers, probably the top 3 layers of their business. It should be something that they and their EA work with, that they absolutely welcome each one, like no matter what. And then beyond that, there just needs to, if they did, it would be for some of them, I think it would be exceptional. And maybe I'm a little bit, I love the principle. I just can't see some of them doing it. So what would you say to those people?
Well, there's 2 things. Not everyone is those people. If we think about if we think about someone with a 50 or 100 or a 500 person business, like if this is best practice, because if you put yourself in the shoes of the new employee,
it's magic.
It's magic.
It is.
The higher up the ladder, if I've got shouted out amongst 25 other new employees in India, I'm like, oh my God, these people actually care.
Yeah. I'm thinking about it, Brad. And I worked in a company that had a few thousand employees when I first got into the media business. And the chairman of the company, the founder, was an amazing man. It was a company in Vancouver called what was it called? Yeah, it was called WIC, Western International Communications. They owned the hockey team. They owned a bunch of the TV stations, radio stations, a bunch of stuff. And I remember I went to a party at their house because I was in head office. And I'll remember this guy name was Frank Griffiths Sr. And I remember, and he was a well-known guy in Vancouver. Anyways, and it's like probably one of the nicest houses in Vancouver. It's out on its own. It's not just waterfront. It's on its own little peninsula of land.
Yeah.
And it's got a garage that will park a 40-foot boat. Like that you drive up, like a land garage. It was amazing. But I remember I showed up to his house, and I remember the rest of my life. And I'm like, for this event, and he's like, "Hey, welcome," and he's all chatty, and I'd seen him in the office, but I was a young kid. He's like, "Yeah, hey, just take a walk around, check the place out." And he's telling me to wander around his mansion on the water with a 40-foot boat garage, and but he's down to earth. But the way he connected and said hi and had a chat, and that was like life-changing for me.
Yeah.
And that's what happens when the big boss connects with people who are not, senior people. It creates a lot of value. And I love that, Brad. My brain's twisting on how to get some of my clients to consider that.
It's a role of the leader. You're not doing, let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum to some of the great leaders that we know, right? So this might be an engineering or technical type leader who is very, very competent, but thinks, I don't really like people. I don't want to manage people. I don't want to be involved in people. What I'd actually prefer to do is just work from home forever and never, ever, ever get involved in people, not talk, not even communicate. Well, that mindset is not serving the customers or the employees, and it's a servant of the ambassador that we're looking for. So even in that mindset, we can find things to do. So let's move on.
I'm just thinking. Because we have 3 new people joining our team in the next couple months. And we always do some things to welcome them. And I think I can do a better job. And we have a small core team. But I'm actually thinking even how I could and should do a better job. And this is good. I love this, Brad. All right, let's keep going.
Let me just answer what you've said before we keep going. One of the objectives of this welcoming is to activate the pride of employees.
Yeah, totally. And, people do it sometimes by, sending people flowers on their first day of work or whatever it happens to be. And that's a nice thing. It's not the same as a personal welcome from the CEO.
And it could take you 15 seconds in the way that I just demonstrated it. Like, it doesn't need to take hours out of your day. Anyway, let's move on to number 5. Every quarter, the CEO launches the company plan and priorities to all employees. So we have a planning process that we talk about often, which is the quarterly offsite. If you go offsite with the leadership team, you determine the plan, either for a day or 2 days. You determine your plan for the next 90 days. What happens next is an ambassadorial role task, which is we went offsite, and we, believe it or not, we didn't just go and do wine tasting. In actual fact, what we did is we determined the priorities and the goals for the next quarter, how we're going to execute that and why that matters. And this is what it is and who's accountable for it. Now, that could be a 15-minute speech or communique, but in an ambassadorial role, serving people so that people know, not only the leadership team, but everyone else is on the same page and they know how much it matters to the leader of the business.
Yep. Yeah, I love it. That's a no-brainer, and that's pretty easy. And I've seen some people do that. And again, when they're a distributor, where it's done on a short video or a conference call. One of my clients in the US, a company called Medix, Andrew Lamorris, the CEO, and he'd be happy for me to mention him. And they launch things by conference calls all the time, right? And they got about 500 people all across the US and a few in Europe too. And that's how they do stuff. And they communicate. And Andrew is the ambassador. He is. Well, as you keep talking about this, Andrew, I think about Andrew, because he does this stuff all the time. He shows up to important meetings, he's networking in the community, building relationships, welcoming people, creating culture events, launching plans, and his executives obviously help to do it. But that's it's critical, because when you're launching those things, it gives importance and meaning to them.
Yeah,
that's the whole idea. It brings energy to them. If the Queen is coming to the opening of a new building or facility, it's a freaking important building or facility, right? And if Brad or Kevin show up, they don't even know who the heck we are, right? It's like it doesn't have that same meaning, and
also it doesn't invoke the pride in England.
Yes,
that's what the Queen.
That's right.
It's the pride. The pride is one of the net effects of the ambassador role.
So the ambassador role is about invoking pride,
activating pride.
Yeah, activating pride. So good. I got my word. I need a word for pride that starts with E, and then I'll be happy. But yes, that's.
Say it with a Canadian accent, and you'll be fine.
Pride. Say it with a Canadian accent. Maybe Italian. Like Italian accent, which I can't do. Yeah, that's a fairly normal thing for CEOs to think about. Yeah, and to do. I love this, Brad. It's got me thinking about it. And this is because this is your area of deep thought and mastery. And there's been a few CEOs over the years that I've talked to about they should do a monthly video. And to share that one of our other clients has been doing it, and it's been very effective. Another CEO I know from the past, he would do a weekly letter to the team every single week. He would send a letter to the team.
Big fan of that. Big fan.
Yeah, weekly letter. So yes, what are some, if we break this down into simple things that people can activate? Attending all key relationship type meetings, whether it's partners or suppliers or customers, like really important meetings or signings. Some sort of regular communication to the team, welcoming people, launching plans. What would be some other simple little things that people could do?
For number 5, launching the plan and priorities. Do you mean which one do you mean, or do you mean? I'm
kind of summarizing a bunch of these ideas. I'm just playing.
So I'm very prescriptive in those 5 things. So they're the 5 things, without spending hours going into it. They are the headlines, and then each of those has got a story and a tool around that in the book that helps a leader to go through and say, this is how you can do it. But again, whilst it's prescriptive, like it's choose your own adventure. You've got to be able to do it in a way that is authentic to you.
So here's the principle of what you need to do, and then the execution could suit it. And the execution, whether you show up in their office, whether you send them a video, whether you write and send them a letter, or whatever that happens to be, or you organize a party, whatever your style is. So let's summarize. So number 1, and the whole point is to remember that there is an ambassador role, and it's part of your role. That's the first thing. And the idea of the ambassador is to evoke pride and to bring that pride out in the organization, the purpose, the relationship, whatever it happens to be. So one, CEO to build a system to have a public profile, whether it's industry forums or leadership or blogging or speaking, but to be, a part of the industry. 2, attending all major, customer contract signings or product launches, events that are kicking off commercial important relationships or activities. People hear about the core values and purpose through the CEO, ideally monthly. New employees are welcomed by the CEO physically or virtually. And I like even the virtual. That's so easy to do. And we got so comfortable with that. That is a big takeaway from me on this, Brad. And then the CEO launches the quarterly company plan and goals to all employees, again, virtually. And some people would do roadshows to do that stuff, and they would go and see all the different people, or doing that in person. This has been great. I love because this is your area of expertise, and it's not an area I put a lot of time into, that I'm learning a lot of stuff on the show as well today. It's a nice kicker.
Good to hear. Good to hear. So the book again is Made to Thrive. The 5 roles to evolve beyond your leadership comfort zone, by myself there. So interesting chat today, a bit of a different one, perhaps, digging into one of the chapters of one of our books, but I hope that you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much for listening. And my name is Brad Giles. You can find me at evolutionpartners.com.au. And of course, Kevin Lawrence, you can find at lawrenceandco.com. And of course, if you would like to, you can see the other version of this on YouTube as well as the podcast. So thanks for listening.
Have a great week.
Have a great week.